I need to take a person who's a buyer, sometimes a receptionist or an admin assistant, sometimes a senior marketing director or a sustainability VP, and I need to get people who don't really think about whether their t-shirts that they're ordering are coming from a sweatshop and turn them into people that do think about it, and more importantly, care about it. That's my job every day, and if I don't understand how those people tick, I'm not going to succeed. I'm Denise Taschereau and I'm from Fairware. We do custom branded merchandise for other companies, so promotional merch, and we spend a lot of time worrying about supply chains and the workers in those supply chains and the materials that products are made from. And we work all over North America with folks like Patagonia and Aveda and closer home, Van City and MEC. So that's kind of what I do now. Before that, I was working at Mountain Equipment Co-op, and I bring that up because I worked in a management role there, a $250 million company with a ton of staff, and got a lot of experience leading from the middle. And you need a lot of empathy to manage up and manage down and to lead from the middle. And now, you know, we're a multi-million-dollar company. I've got like 9 or 10 people on staff, and I'm the boss, but the core tactics of leading with empathy haven't really changed. So I want to bring that up because it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or you're working in a big company. I think there's a lot to be had by viewing the world through that lens. So fundamentally for me, I think you need to be a leader that thinks about people and what makes people tick. And you start with that individual, like what makes you tick, and then you start to look at what is a group of people who come together, a team or a project group, what makes them tick. And then you look at the organizational level, and it's just groups of people. These groups, they gaggle up together and they become an organization. And if you look down that funnel, if you don't understand that first stage, the person, it's very hard to succeed. And something that I'm really passionate about, and if you guys have heard me speak before, I usually get a plug in for, is the idea of change management. And when I look out here, I think change makers. And my passion for ethical sourcing and my passion for sustainable products makes me a change maker. It doesn't make me an effective leader, and it doesn't mean my business is going to succeed. It makes me maybe more interesting at certain dinner parties, but that's really it. What makes me succeed is really understanding change management. So that's what I want to talk about, is just the fundamentals of change management. And there's a science to it, and there's an art to it. I'm not really talking about systemic change or societal change and systems and theories of change. I'm really talking about people. And in my case, I need to take a person who's a buyer, sometimes a receptionist or an admin assistant, sometimes a senior marketing director or a sustainability VP. And I need to get people who don't really think about whether their t-shirts that they're ordering are coming from a sweatshop and turn them into people that do think about it, and more importantly, care about it. That's my job every day, and if I don't understand how those people tick, I'm not going to succeed as a leader. So I want to talk about something. I'm going to be kind of practical about this, because that's how I roll. I'm going to talk about what I call the costs of change, and I was reflecting today on it, and it's you know, it's a concept that anytime you ask someone to change, there's a cost. There could be real costs. There could be intangible costs. And I'm going to start by talking about a parable that I always reflect back on from my undergraduate days. I did a degree in international development, and I once read this article about this concept called sugar in the gas tank. And I don't know if you've ever heard it, but I think about it like almost daily. And the idea is this kind of classic resistance in communities, often in the developing world. And, you know, somebody would be coming in to develop or maybe mow down a forest. And at night, you know, a villager would go out and pour sugar in the gas tank of the bulldozers or the tractors or whatever it was. And it's such a brilliant resistance tactic because you can't smell it, you can't see it, you can't taste it, but suddenly your project is sputtering. And you might flush it out for a moment, but then suddenly you're sputtering again. And I think so many of our projects and so much of our work subtly sputters, and you never know why. And it's really unpacking what's going on with a group and what's going on with individuals. And I think the best way to do that is through that lens of empathy. And I have a quote here, and I rarely read quotes, but I think probably a lot of you have read this letter from Ray Jasper in the last week, and if you haven't, you should. He's a young African-American man on death row in Texas. He wrote a letter that the Huffington Post and many others have published this week, and it's profound in so many ways for so many reasons. But one part of it is he talks about empathy, and one sentence in his huge treatise on empathy is this: empathy gives you an inside view. It doesn't say, if that were me. It says, that is me. And I think you know, it's such a poignant way to frame empathy. And if you put yourself in that space, I really think that mountains can move. And when I kind of get back to this idea of cost of change, I always think about 3 factors. I think about systems change when you ask people to change. I think about time, and I think about relationships. So I'll start with systems. And let's give an example. You guys, some of you have businesses, you sell stuff or sell services. When you ask someone to change, you might be asking them to change an accounting system. You might be asking them to change the way they process orders. You might be asking them to change a vendor. It might be as simple as a change of onboarding a new vendor. I did a project with a brand on the East Coast the other day, and probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was kind of not really a work thing. It was sort of for a friend, but it was kind of for work, and her company was paying for it. And what was interesting to me is she said, you know what, I'm just going to put it on my personal Visa card because to onboard a new vendor is just a pain. And, it was just a simple little thing. Like, it takes maybe 15 minutes, or maybe like her and the people in accounting aren't getting along right now, or whatever it was a very basic barrier to change. And those are the kinds of things I think you need to pay attention to and understand. So that's systemic change, those kind of institutional barriers to getting through change. The second one is time. And it kind of builds off the story I just told, but sometimes it takes a long time to change. We just instituted a new integration with Salesforce and QuickBooks, and it's been so epic and gnarly and hard, and it's taken almost 7 months. It was supposed to take 2. And when I think about, had my supplier said to me, it's going to take 7 months and it's going to be gnarly and hard, would I have engaged? Probably not. But now I'm kind of bitter and resentful because he told me it was going to take 2 months and it was going to be smooth as butter, and it hasn't been. So this idea of time, like really understanding the time it takes to change. And then the third one, and this is the one I am so passionate about, is relationships. Don't ever underestimate what you're asking someone to do. If I ask you to change who you buy your office supplies from, I'm asking you all sorts of things. I'm asking you to turn around and call the person you currently buy your office supplies from and disappoint them and break their heart and abandon them. That's what I'm asking you to do. And it's really harsh. And if you don't understand that that's what you're asking people to do when they change, if you don't have that sense of empathy, those shoes are mine. It's hard to do that. When we go in and pitch to big clients, we put this concept of the cost of change on the table. We present it. We're like, this is what your t-shirts are going to look like, and this is how you're going to get sustainability reporting from us, and nobody else who sells swag cares. Like, you gotta go with us. And we talk about the cost of change, and we talk about those kinds of elements because it just builds trust with people, and it builds rapport with people, and it's it's kind of a key pace. And I can tell you 1,000,000 times over, I have presented case studies at Mount Equipment Co-op that have ROIs of under a year on major energy investments and not had them move. And you think, I've got the business case. I've had policies at MEC where I had the board endorsement, I had the CEO's endorsement, and not have change happen. Like, what more can you ask for than a case study and board endorsement? Things don't happen easily. And I think, we constantly pitch to clients, and it's like, I know I have better product. I know I'm giving you better pricing. Why am I not getting through this? And those are the things, like, I think empathy makes you understand that minutia and the stickiness of human, kind of humanness. And it'll make you more successful as an entrepreneur. And I'm going to just tell kind of one, maybe 1 or 2 last stories. I'll tell one last story. And it's about probably the hardest day of my life as a professional, or one of them. I'll exclude Vision Vancouver for a moment, but I'll think about from the work context. And, Madeline and Donovan, who are in the room tonight, know the long saga of this story. But we have a client in the US, probably the biggest, most beloved beauty products, hair product company in North America with a deep, deep commitment to natural botanicals and all good stuff. And we've been their client, they've been our client for 9 years. We did a major program for them this year, part of a program we do every 2 years for them for a global congress. We had 9 different products we were building for them, 4 of them we just sourced for them, and 5 of them we actually designed and built for them. And 3 of them were with a new factory and a new manufacturer. They were in the company was in Toronto. And it was brilliant, and the design mock-ups were beautiful, and everybody was in love with the concepts and the project, and the factory failed to deliver. They just couldn't pull off the fabrication and the manufacturing of this program. And we're talking decent 5 figures in our most important client in their biggest global event. They only run it every 2 years. And, you know, yeah, we delivered, you know, whatever it was, 5 out of 8 or 6 out of the 8 of the products, but it was a huge piece of the pie for us, and it was hugely humiliating. It's never happened to us before. We've been late every now and then because there's a storm or something like that, but a major project like this that had so much of our heart and soul and reputational capital in it, and we just blew it. Like there's, you know, I can go on for all the reasons and whose fault it was and this, that, and the other thing, but at the end of the day, we just totally dropped the ball. And I'll always remember it was a day in kind of early October when we realized that the factory just couldn't deliver. And I had to call this like senior buyer at this big beloved brand and say, you're not getting your stuff. And knowing the timelines were too late for them to get alternate product in, for us to get alternate product in. And I remember kind of going in, I went into work early and I went in the back room and I was literally shaking when I made this phone call. And the phone call wasn't to say, you know, here's all the reasons or here's how we can help you. The phone call was just to say sorry. And I had sent her an email the night before saying, the factory can't do it, like here's all the information. So she knew. And I just picked up the phone and I said, it's Denise, I want to say sorry. And I talked about why I wanted to say sorry. Because my supply chain had failed me, because I had failed her, but more importantly because her client, the global affinity marketing manager, had her entire year's performance plan, her entire assortment for Congress that she had to sell through, had sales targets, margin targets, profit targets, was going to not succeed or had the potential to not succeed to the levels that she had thought it could because of us. And I just said that. And it was amazing because the buyer who'd been there for 23 years as a professional buyer, she kind of paused and she said, I got your email, I knew this was coming. And I have to say in 23 years, I could probably count on less than 2 hands the number of times the supplier has ever called and just said sorry. So I'll leave you with that story. I think empathy has great power to help you succeed as entrepreneurs. Peace out.
Because we can't not assume, that's why empathy becomes really difficult.
We lose track sometimes of the strategic center of gravity of what is social entrepreneurship. And it is indeed, in my judgment anyway, empathy.